All right, so I want to welcome everyone to the conversation about Holganix and agriculture. And I was reminded that today is World Soil Day, which I think is somewhat appropriate, that we're all here to talk about soil and soil biology. So we have, let's see, it's supposed to page down. There we go. So we're going to talk about our Bio 800 Plus product, and as we say here, it's a very complete, diverse blend of different beneficial microbes. But before I get into that, Katie, I think you had a couple poll questions that you wanted to run. So why don't we go ahead and do that now?
Sounds good. Let's go ahead and launch them. So what do you farm? And they're just general categories. And you can select more. You can select more than one option too. Right, we got 64% of the vote. Give it a couple more seconds. $73.82. Awesome. Here are the results, Dave. So you got a wide variety of people on the phone.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I can't actually see the results. So are they seeing them, or are they still seeing my screen?
They should see the results. And
okay.
Unless I did something wrong, which is possible. But I can read them off to you. So 56% of the people on the line are row crops, 44 vegetable, 22 fruit, 33 horticultural types, and 22 other.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Let's try the next poll. And this is just going to give us an understanding of your knowledge of Holganix. So, have you ever used our products before? Yes, I'm testing, or not yet. We got 75% of the vote. Can we get it back up to 80? Awesome. And so, Dave, we have 40% of the people are using the product currently, 20% are testing, and 40% not yet.
Oh, excellent. Very good. Well, thanks everyone for participating in that. I'm going to talk about Holganix, a little bit about my experience. I should probably start with me. So again, Dave Stark, I run the ag business for Holganix. I've been with the company, full time, it'll be 3 years, sometime this month. In about 4 years ago this month, I retired from Monsanto, where I had a great career. My PhD is in molecular biology. I did a lot of the early gene cloning work going back to the early 1980s and into the 90s. I helped launch Monsanto's first biotech product in plants, which was actually the BT potato called New Leaf. And I ran that business for a while. I was in the lab that developed the Roundup Ready technology and such. So again, a really just blessed technical career. Then I shifted and ran some business units. I was part of the global corporate affairs and global strategy teams, the global vegetable business. And when I hit Combo 80, that's age and years of service, I got the golden handshake, and it was great because I had a great career, but time to move on. As a favor to a friend who started the Yield Lab here in town, which is an incubator for companies that want to get into agriculture, Holganix was one of the companies they first brought in. One of the things they do is they give industry veterans, and I'm way too young to be that, but whatever, as mentors to a company. So he asked me to mentor Holganix. And when I saw the Holganix messaging, well, we build yield, build strong roots, improve soil health, less fertilizer, less pesticide, less water, on and on. I'm like, yeah, do you grow my hair again too? Um, so yeah, I was a skeptic. And then what happened is I started to meet Holganix's customers, because you see, I'd never heard of Holganix, but I heard of their customers. And this is just a short list of the customers that I bet you've all heard of too. And it was the customers, which are really the best turf managers in the world, whose grass appears on television. People with multi-million-dollar contracts run and play on it, and it has to perform. They told me, no, Dave, I do cut my fertilizer in half. I do reduce my water 10 to 30% because the roots are deeper. They're more extensive. A lot of people told me that they don't even, they cover the cost of the product just in their fungicide savings because their turf is healthier and they get less disease. They said that, they plant seed, and I actually tried this in my own yard last year, and they spray the Bio 800 on it, and it comes up faster and gets established, and it does. The guy who runs the complex for one of the most valuable sports teams and franchises on the planet told me when he lays sod, he'll spray Holganix. 5 days later, he'll bend down with both hands, and he can't pull that sod up. So that, okay, my old thought that soil health was all about no-till, Roundup Ready genetics, and selling more Roundup is probably pretty limited. So I got to find out what's going on. So I think we all know that it's soil and biology that work together to it's plants and microbes in the soil that work together to build a functional soil. And no big surprise there, but it is all of the biology that builds organic matter, which builds soil structure, so the soil holds water, but still aerates and drains. It retains nutrients and informs the plants can use. It lets air get into the soil, which is really important. And really, all this biology works together to build soil and feed it. Unfortunately, we have a lot of soil like this. So I live in St. Louis, and I see this a lot, where really the soil is dead. There's very little organic matter. Can't get a shovel in it. When it rains, water washes off, kind of like asphalt. You have anything growing in it, you have to constantly feed and water, or it won't live, because all basically the soil is doing is helping the plant stand upright. There's a lot of things we do that causes this, things I didn't know until I started digging into soil science. And one of the things, for example, is when we overfeed plants. Now, this is not a slam on synthetic fertilizers. They're great, and we want to continue using them. But when we over-fertilize, the feedback mechanism for the plant is, in a normal situation, the plant will expend about 30% of its energy to secrete food in the root zone to attract and multiply microbes, because the microbes in turn get nutrients the plant can't access. When we overfeed the plant stops feeding the microbes so much. So the microbes then consume the organic matter and nutrients in the soil, and through time, that's how the soil gets degraded. So we need to bring that back into balance. I remember in the early days of no-till with Roundup Ready crops, I had some guys tell me, Dave, I left all that corn debris out in the field, and a year later, it's still there. What's going on? This is a mess. This isn't working. And sadly, it was because in those situations, the soil didn't have enough microbial life to break it down. So this field, you can see there's a lot of nutrition in the crop debris and in the cover crop, but not a single molecule of it will ever go to future generations of crops unless a microbe breaks it down into chemical simple forms that are then accessible by the next generation of plants. So whether that's plant debris, manure, etc., the process that's called mineralization, microbes are required to make that happen. So I say all this because I'm trying to build the case for why whatever microbial product you use, you want diversity. The backbone of any microbial program needs to be microbial diversity, meaning bacteria, fungi, and protozoa, because they all work together like an engine. Any single component is important, but being out of balance can cause problems. So for example, bacteria are the most numerous. And this quote from the Food and Ag Organization, really says that bacteria, from our point of view, are probably the most important and valuable forms of life in the soil. And they are, because they're the primary degraders. They solubilize nutrients and such. So they are key. Without bacteria, we're not cycling nutrients. But that's only part of the story. Fungi are also really important. So this is one type of fungus called mycorrhizal fungi. So you can see the big plant roots, but that white feathery area between the roots, those aren't root hairs. That's actually mycorrhizal fungi hyphae. So they're growing along and they penetrate into the plant roof, but because they're smaller than even the tiniest root hairs, they can get between soil particles and reach out further. So they effectively increase the surface area of plants' roots anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times. And they do things like solubilize phosphorus and such. There's other kinds of fungi that, like trichoderma, that live along the root. They eat other microbes. They eat disease-causing soil-borne microbes, and they eat bacteria. And then last are the protozoa. These are important because they eat bacteria, as do fungi. So you can see all those little black dots. Those are bacteria. The protozoa, as the bacteria multiply, also will increase, and they keep the populations in balance. Why do we care? Well, when we apply fertilizer, whether that's in manure, it's crop debris, or it's synthetic NP and K, if you have bacteria in the soil, the bacteria are going to eat that fertilizer. And that's a good thing because bacteria, almost all of them, live within half an inch of a root. However, bacteria have a really high nitrogen requirement, so they tie the nitrogen up. And sometimes you may see yellow corn syndrome, where you've put down nitrogen, you've got crop debris, but the bacteria are tying up the nitrogen while they're breaking down the stubble from last year's crop. So your corn crop doesn't have enough nitrogen, even though you've applied it. What you need in that situation is more fungi and protozoa, because God created them to eat the bacteria, but they have a very low nitrogen requirement. So they are constantly spitting out ammonia and nitrate. And again, this is all within half an inch of the root, because that's where the bacteria live. So we get the cycling of the nitrogen back to the plant in the chemical form it wants. So without that diversity, we're not getting the cycling. The lower right-hand corner is a picture of a nematode. Not all nematodes are bad. Some, like soybean cyst, bore into the plant root and they suck out the juices and cause a lot of damage. But other nematodes are predators that eat those nematodes, as well as fungi, bacteria, even insect eggs. So, that was a real high level, look at why diversity in soil is so important and why we need that balance. I should also say other things that happen that can upset the balance in soil is flooding. So if you've got an area of your field that's sat underwater for a while, and when it drains, it smells like a swamp, well, all of the aerobic or the air-loving microbes, which are most of the beneficials, have died. And what you've got are the anaerobic microorganisms, which smell to no end, and also tend to be more of the plant pathogens. So you need to restore that to an aerobic state. Tilling tends to kill fungi, especially the mycorrhizae. Now, I'm not saying don't till. I'm just saying that when we do this, we need to add the balance back. So I like to look for evidence. So this is all, the scientific models and such. So where in nature does this happen to prove all this is right? Well, this is the Olympia National Forest. And you go to any forest, no one feeds it, no one fertilizes it. Look at the biomass. This is here because all of that nutrient cycling from the massive trees to the microscopic bacteria and fungi in the soil are working together. Here's another example. This is a golf course actually pretty close to where I live, and this friend took this picture. This is actually a disease. This is called fairy ring. But what's happening is as the fungi grows the circle, the leading edge of the fungi are breaking down the plant debris and releasing those nutrients to the grass. So that's why it's darker green. So we can see in nature how the microbes really are contributing to providing nutrients to the plants. So what's in Holganix? Like I say, it's a complete blend of all the different kinds of microbes you've got here. Plant growth promoting, the degrading bacteria, mycorrhizal fungi, trichoderma, protozoa, bacteria that live in the plant like indigo has, or on top of the plant on the surface. We also put different food sources in there. So when you use a Bio 800 Plus product, you know, our rate in corn is half a gallon an acre. You're putting down about a pound of sugar an acre, and that's there for the microbes. We have humic and fulvic acid, amino acids. You'll see micronutrients like zinc and iron and calcium and such. All of that is to get the microbes established in the soil. They are not at a level or a rate that's going to supplement any deficiency in your soil for your crop. So don't think that if you've got a zinc deficiency, for example, Bio 800 is going to fix that. Our nutrients are for the microbes, so it's not to replace those particular deficiencies. I should also add our product is 100% organic, and it's not necessarily, you know, the market we're going for, but it's the only way we can make it. So it is there if that's of value to you. So again, I like looking for evidence and things that I know growers like, you know, fast establishment, disease suppression, better root mass and such. These are things we have seen for years in our turf business. So for example, here on the left, this is a Muirfield Village Golf Club. It's just outside of Columbus, Ohio. It's Jack Nicklaus's home course. In the middle of August, and how many of you are planting anything in the middle of August? I mean, I grew up in Columbus. It's hot, humid, you don't plant grass. Anyhow, they decided to redo a tee box in part of the fairway 6 weeks before hosting the President's Cup. And if you're a golfer, you know that is a big internationally televised golf tournament. And the superintendent there, who's one of the biggest names in the business, used our product, and you can see what happened 4 weeks later. His course was ready. And now they use it on everything, all the ornamentals, all the grass. You go to the pictures on the right, that's the Pittsburgh Pirates third baseline several years ago. So the picture on the top is dollar spot disease. And the challenge for the gentleman managing the Pirates field is he couldn't spray fungicides because the third baseman had chemical sensitivity. And he was able to convince the organization that being able to breathe during a game was more important than the grass looking good, which is probably smart. So they got desperate and they tried Bio 800 Plus. 3 days later, look at the healing. Now, part of that quick response is because microbes fight each other, and the beneficials will exclude and in cases actively kill the pathogens. But dollar spot disease is also a nutrient deficiency. So part of this response is the microbes freeing nutrients that are already in that ground, helping that grass heal in. The top picture of the year, the ornamentals, that's a customer picture that they sent in. Those plants are the same age. You know, look at the difference in root mass and flowering. That's really pretty impressive. So now I'm going to talk about data. I want to start by saying that, you know, I showed the picture of all those logos of the best turf managers in the country. Those are repeat customers for years. To me, that's the best data because these guys, they know their turf. If the product didn't work, they wouldn't keep using it. So, you know, I put that forth, you know, really as a really an important data point. And by the way, what is turf? Turf is also a grass like corn, wheat, small grains, what we grow in our pastures. So there's a lot of similarity, which is why it's relevant to agriculture. But when I came on board, the company had been doing field trials in agriculture since about 2012. This is a snapshot of the trials we did in 16 and 17. You can see the different crops and geographies. Some are university, some are grower trials. So I've got a lot of data here. I'm not going to go and show it because frankly, the results are good, but it's small plot data. So it's highly variable. And yield, which is the primary thing we're measuring, is a tough thing to measure on small plots, even when the numbers look good. So I'm going to show more summaries. If you really need to see more raw data, though, let me know. But knowing all this, and frankly, all the years I spent at Monsanto, which is why we would do thousands and thousands of plots and hundreds of locations and hire statisticians to hope to get 70% wins to show a yield increase. We're not Monsanto. We don't have that kind of budget. So in 2018, instead of pushing trials, we really pushed product for growers, for commercial growers to adopt and try. And I also knew that giving product away wasn't always the best thing because sometimes people would pay a lot of attention to it and other times they don't, and it's not their fault, they get busy. And so what we wanted to do is we instead, just working with people like Kevin Van Trump in the Van Trump Conference and a couple other venues like that, we were able to sell about 70,000 acres, mostly corn, but also beans, some wheat, cotton, tomatoes, strawberries, and some other crops. And what we did is we said, look, guys, we're going to give you a deeply discounted price, something I know we can't sustain. I wish we could. And we're going to give you an invoice, but don't pay the invoice until after you harvest and you're satisfied. And the only criteria for satisfaction is you. You don't share, I'd love to see all your data. It's not required. You tell us if you're satisfied with the product. You don't have to open your books. It was a big risk for us. But I also knew because there was an invoice, guys would pay attention to it. They put it on enough acreage that it would matter and such, and it paid off. So what did we see? We saw better roots. There are some areas, especially here in Missouri, that were really, really dry. And some of the guys told me that the corn looked better this year than it did in 2012, which was another really bad drought year. And we saw higher yields. It's typical though, and I called customers in the summer and said, hey, when you're looking across your field, if you can't see the difference where you applied the Bio 800, that's okay. That's normal. If you go out though and you dig the roots, you should see a difference. You should see a difference early in the season, and that does need to be there. You should also see a difference once the plant starts to flower and you get pods set and ear fill, because you need to see higher yield year one. You don't have to do this 4 or 5 years to see higher yield year one. So I don't have all of the results in from the customers. In terms of the number of customers, we're well more than half that I've heard from. I'm not going to share their data because I don't have permission, and I respect that. So I'll show you some general summary data, but I'm not going to attribute it to anybody because, again, I can't. It's just not right. It's their data. What I can say is we were really looking for a 2x ROI. So if you spend $9 an acre for the product, we want you to make 18, and if not more. And it looks like we had a pretty good track record. So far, on an acre basis, we've received payment on over 97% of the acres. Again, there's still some crop out there, and there's still some guys that are busy that haven't looked at their data. So we're not at 100% of the acres, but we're pretty far along. The couple percent of the acres that didn't pay, they were small plots on different farms. I can tell you, I spoke with the guys, they wanted to pay, but they either got wiped out by hail, high winds, drought, or, in one case, had phenomenal yields, but just didn't see that ROI. And that's okay. No product gives 100% wins. And I'm not even, man, I'd be celebrating if we kept even 97% wins. But we're doing really well. So I know this isn't the kind of data you're looking for. This is where we are, and I'm being as transparent as I can, respecting our customers' wishes. There are a couple things, though, that we learned that we will do better next year. Number one, clogging, and I want to address it. Our product contains humic acid. And if you guys have used liquid humic acids, you know that they've got some particle size and they can give some clogging problems. I can tell you that for the guys that had larger openings on their tips and 20 mesh screens, no problem. But for the guys, even though I said, if you have smaller than a 20 mesh screen, like a 50 or 100, you might get some clogging. But when you're protecting a small tip opening, you really can't run a 20 mesh screen. Those guys, they had some clogging, and some it was bad. So, we've learned from that. I apologize for it, but we have a fix. So when you get the tote of Bio 800, if you can use a 20 mesh screen, mix it up, because that humic acid settles to the bottom, and pump it all in your tank. But if you don't have the larger mesh screens and you have 50 or 100 and small tip sizes, then don't mix it up. And we're putting a filter on the tote, so you can leave all that big stuff in the tote and not put it in your tank. And that's going to go a long way to help with the clogging. And don't worry, all the biology is still going to go into your tank. You can't filter that out. You're just going to lose some of the humic acids and such, which are good, but it's not as important as the biology. So again, everybody's going to have that filter on their tote when they get delivery. Last year, we also delivered direct to farm, and it was a lot of work for us and for growers because our product is refrigerated in storage. And that causes a lot of concern to a number of customers. And I'm here to tell you, please don't let it worry you, because on your farm, you've got at least 2 weeks, really 3. And we had a lot of experience with this. We had a guy that didn't take totes, he took jugs, and he was just north of the Florida border. And he told me he went about 3 weeks and the product was fine. We have more stability in our product. We were being over conservative. So we will keep it refrigerated. We are going to have distribution next year. Our goal is to be within 1 day of every customer. So you've got the full 2 to 3 weeks. If weather happens and you're just afraid it's going to go longer, we'll just take it back and put it in the cold storage for you. The product can go in and out of the cold, no problem. By the way, you can mix it all into your tank and use that tank over the course of a week or two. Once it's diluted into a larger volume, you've got more than 2 weeks of life. It's just not a problem. So don't let the fact that we have to keep it cold be a hindrance for you. Nothing went bad last year. And if it goes bad, we're going to replace it for you. That's on us. So I'm very confident that with our logistics and with the filters, we're going to take care of the couple things that some guys really struggled with. I can say right now, again, we're working hard on that distribution. It's looking good. And we're on about 6,700 acres of winter wheat. A lot of these are trial acres. Some, we've sold to guys to try. So that was a lot, but I think it was really important to address that. So now I just want to, tell you what we saw last year. So this is a picture that a customer sent. I didn't ask him to send the picture. The picture's phenomenal. You get the rooting effect. Now, by the way, I heard from a lot of people at the Van Trump conference that, yeah, there are different products that can give a good rooting effect, but then we see all this top growth and no more yield. That's why I emphasize you won't necessarily see a big boost in the vegetative or above ground growth. That's not what we're doing. It's partly why the product is so popular in the turf industry, because what they don't want is a product that makes them have to mow more often. And we don't cause the surge growth, but we do keep the color and the playability and in agriculture, the yield, that's what we're going for. We're not going for big vegetative growth. So this was corn. It was treated one time at planting, 1/2 gallon an acre, in furrow, mixed with starter fertilizer. Through all the years of data that we've got, university and grower data, including this last summer, I've seen yield increases. Well, really, yeah, there've been a couple times that we don't have any gain. We didn't win, but typically it's in the 3 to as high as 22 bushel an acre range. Typical result, though, is going to be more 6 to 11 bushels. It's variable, but what we don't see is a downside. We usually see a yield increase, and again, I go for at least a 2x return on the investment. A lot of times we do a lot better. Soybeans, similar kind of deal, but this time it wasn't applied in furrow. It was applied as a foliar spray 7 days after planting, just again, 1/2 gallon an acre. And look at the difference in the roots, the tap root in particular. See the root nodules on the Holganix treated versus the control. The grower said that he had trouble, because he didn't have a shovel, he had trouble pulling up the check plant because the roots kept breaking, but not the Holganix plant, the Holganix treated. Again, typical yield increase in beans is going to be 2 to 6 bushels an acre. So look, I'm not going to, like some people say, oh, 40, 50% increase. Yeah, right. This is pretty reproducible, and that's a nice return on investment, and it's helping the soil. This is another picture that came in just a couple weeks ago. This is winter wheat, and again, 1/2 gallon an acre, sprayed foliar 5 days after planting. The difference in the root thickness and root mass says it all. So here's some of the data. This is in north central Illinois. So this I like to call some of the best corn ground God created. This is the same field 2 years in a row. This is replicated plot data. So yes, there's a lot of noise if I were to give you all the raw data. So these are averages, but these are averages from the researcher. So this is what he represented. Again, high variability. 2016, phenomenal yield, 247 bushels. This is dry land. This is not irrigated. He was rotating off of beans in 16. It was a good year. In 17, we got a similar yield increase. Overall yields weren't as high. It was a different year. Now we go to soils that aren't quite as good. This is Western Missouri. This is, again, the same research farm, replicated plots, but they're long rows, 4 rows wide. In 2017, some of the highest yield increases I've seen with Holganix on corn, over 21 bushels. 2018 was a really dry year, especially where this farm was. And again, it's not irrigated. The farm manager said, and he does a lot of research with a lot of products, this was the best looking corn plot on the farm. And we still got over 10 bushels. Now I can tell you, if I did a scatter plot, that average is dragged down by 1 rep that was really, really low. And as tempting as it is to throw it out, because then we're plus 15 bushels, I can't do that. So I'll just tell you, it's not a widget. It's not going to give the exact same thing every time, but what an agriculture does. But these are pretty good results. Soybean, same place in Western Missouri, same farm manager. You can see, again, just over 3 bushels an acre, 2 years in a row, even in 18, which was a really, really dry year. Now, I know there were some vegetable farmers on, and I've got more data that I can share that I've got here. We have great results in potato. And I've done studies at 3 different universities and commercial growers in Idaho. We've got some studies in Washington and in North Dakota and in Pennsylvania. What we tend to see is higher payable yield. So you get more potatoes in the size range that you get paid, the $7, $8 a hundredweight or whatever it is that that you're growing, and not the 50-cent a hundredweight payout for culls. We also see higher weight per acre. Our results on potato are fantastic. I didn't include the strawberry data, but I'll tell you, berries absolutely love the stuff. My trials in California, and I have a customer base in Northeast Indiana. The berries do extremely well. Also in Alabama, where we had a really good year on strawberries. We've got data on cucumbers, cucurbits, so whether it's cucumber, melon, watermelon, pumpkin, and tomatoes. Lots of data here. The programs are a little different, but again, years of work here. I think if you were at the Van Trump conference, you probably heard Barrett mention that we've got some nematode control. So first of all, we are not an EPA registered nematicide. So this is not something you will find on the label. That takes a lot of work and money, and we're exploring doing that. But we actually had some golf people down in Florida where nematodes are a big problem tell us a year after using our product, their nematode counts dropped like a rock. And so I got excited. So I went to a nematode expert at University of Illinois, and we've done 3 years of studies now. He has found broad spectrum activity. So this is a soybean cyst nematode, but also corn lesion, tomato root knot, lance sting, multiple modes of action. In field trials that we've done with the university, we see again higher yield. It's high soybean cyst nematode ground, and he inoculates every plant with 2,000 eggs. So we're hitting them with a hammer, and we're seeing an 75 to 80% reduction. The picture there on the right, that is an actual nematode that was killed by one of the microbes in the Bio 800 mix, and we know which one it is. There's more than one that has this activity, and so it's just there. We're going to continue to pursue it, but like Barrett says, this is like the prize in the Cracker Jack box. It comes with the product. So I threw a lot at you. Go for biological diversity. We have a lot of data that shows that we increase root mass, we increase yield. We're going to help build the soil. I tell people, even if you don't see a 2x return on investment on yield, the worst thing that happens is we're making your soil a little better. For most people, they're going to get a nice yield boost. We're going to deal with the clogging issue. I think the filter is an easy solution. It's nothing that's adding cost to the product, and the logistics. So I'd really thank you for your attention, and I'd love to take your questions. There's my contact information. You can call me or email me or text me, whatever you prefer. And Katie, if we have time now, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes set aside for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. So the first question is from Susan. How do the microbes stay alive or active when it's sealed up and put in a jug without oxygen?
That's a great question. And that's actually the whole key in why we keep the product refrigerated. Because you're right, our microbes are not spores, they're not dormant, they are alive. Our lids are vented, by the way. We use refrigeration to stabilize them. When I say product goes bad, that's really a stupid word on my part, because the product doesn't go bad, but what happens is when it's warm, the microbes are going to consume the oxygen in the tote or in the jug, and then a lot of them die because they have to have oxygen. Some of them shift to anaerobic fermentation. So they're still alive and growing. They produce CO2 gas, which is why our lid is vented, and they smell. You cannot mistake product that has gone anaerobic. You can still use it. When we have a problem around our facility in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of growers that come and take it away. I guess they plug their nose and use it, but it's not as diverse. So we want to replace that. I can tell you again, 70,000 acres, not a single gallon went bad, because in refrigeration, we get at least 2-year shelf life. And by the way, we know this because we DNA fingerprint the product. So we can tell you every species of bacteria, fungi, and protozoa that's in the mix.
Awesome. This one's from Rob. Can you go over rates again for soybeans?
0.5 gallon an acre at planting. Now, I've got some data, and especially in that Missouri trial, that says if you go out and you apply a second half a gallon an acre and do it, either foliar, or if you're going to go out and do any kind of side dressing, you get an additional yield boost. I don't have enough data though to change my recommendation to make, because what I want is that 2x ROI. So even though it's a yield boost, I don't know that it's worth it yet to make that recommendation. So right now, it's a half a gallon an acre one time at planting. And there's a lot of flexibility how you can put it down.
Okay. And this one's from Mark. Can you tell me a little bit more about the berry data?
Yeah, so strawberries. So we were in Southern California the last couple years. Now, in some of the produce crops, we're using more product because, again, strawberries are harvested over a period of like 4 months, at least where this is in Southern California. So we're really pushing them. But the net revenue to the grower was $3,000 an acre higher using our product. That was a 10x return. It was huge. The berries are ready earlier, so they can start harvesting early, and that's when the prices are better. They get more marketable yield. The fruit tastes better, although unfortunately, flavor isn't something that you really get paid for. In Alabama, they had some really bad weather events, but we had a number of strawberry growers that said if they, on where they used Holganix, they actually were able to harvest a really good crop, and it saved them. When it comes to other berries like blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, same kind of thing. Less disease. We're going to come out and do a couple foliar sprays and get the microbes on the flowers and on the developing fruit to help keep the pathogens from establishing. That much better size and higher yield.
Awesome, Dave. Well, it is 2:50, so that wraps up our presentation for today.
All right. I want to just, again, thank everybody. If you're using the product or testing it, thank you. Any questions or concerns, never hesitate to contact me. And if you want to give us a try, again, if you have questions, let me know. I just really appreciate your time and your interest.
Awesome. And this session has been recorded, so you guys will all receive a recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint slides along with some other resources Dave has mentioned throughout the presentation. So look for a follow-up email sometime tomorrow morning.
Okay, thanks everyone.